Later, as we inch closer to the 2030 horizon, a deadline we fixed ourselves for offering humanity the right to live in peace and prosperity without any distinction based on race or religion. At this time, the Palestinian people is confronted with a choice between death by bombs or death by hunger. Every day, men, women, and children are dying, while we cannot take action to stop this genocide unfolding before our very eyes. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today, even the deaf hear the cries of Palestinian children. The blind can see the bloodbath, the deprivation and desolation of the Palestinian people. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this meeting comes at a crucial point for peace and security in the Middle East. It reflects the renewed will of the international community to revive the peace process on just, equitable, and lasting foundations in keeping with international law and relevant United Nations resolution. Right now, the world has its eyes upon us at a time when international law, a sentinel, a guarantor of global peace and security, is being trampled like never before. It's as if our world had become a wilderness where might makes right. A world which seems to have lost its soul, the soul of our humanity, a world which is lost. So today, when all hope is permissible, will we be able to meet the legitimate expectations of this people, which calls for its right to life, simply to life, to dignity and to hope? A people the suffering of which is the mirror of our collective failure to guarantee peace and justice. The solution proposed by the United Nations, that is, a Palestinian state living peacefully side by side with Israel, is the only way forward. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my country, the Union of the Comoros, is loyal to its principles, respect for international law. We'd like to solemnly reiterate our unswerving support to the two-state solution with East Jerusalem as the capital of the State of Palestine. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Union of the Comoros welcomes the convening of this international conference, co-chaired by France and Saudi Arabia under the auspices of the United Nations. A meeting being held just a few weeks before the 80th session of the General Debate of the General Assembly. Given the pace of massacres being perpetrated against the Palestinian people, by the time the next General Assembly takes place, we risk having on our conscience the fact that we didn't manage to act to save thousands of innocent lives. Thus, we are duty-bound to come out of this conference with the deepest conviction that we resolutely placed the future of the Palestinian people atop our international agenda. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, for decades now, voices have cried out to denounce the injustice being subjected on the Palestinian people. After decades of suffering endured by the Palestinian people, the time for truth and action has come. This conference, will it be one which recognizes the right to life and justice for the Palestinian people, or will it be one characterized by ineffectual speeches, shorn of any immediate prospects? Ladies and gentlemen, regardless of what the answer is, one thing is certain. Someday, history will judge us.
أشكر معالي وزير الخارجية والتعاون الدولي المسؤول عن العالم العربي والشتى.
I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Francophonie, the Diaspora and African Integration, and on behalf of Saudi Arabia, France, and the chairs of the working groups of the conference, Brazil, Canada, Egypt, Indonesia, Ireland, Italy, Japan, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Mexico, the Kingdom of Norway, Qatar, Spain, Turkey, the United Kingdom, the European Union, the League of Arab States, on behalf of all of these, to adopt the outcome document and its annexes as per Resolution 79/81 adopted on the 3rd of December last year. The outcomes are in fact proposals across the humanitarian, legal, security, and narratives pillar, so as to implement the two-state solution and guarantee peace and security for all. We call on you to support this document before the end of the 79th session of the General Assembly. by contacting the missions of Saudi Arabia and France in New York.
Congratulations.
والآن أعطي الكلمة إلى سعادة توسكاسا أويومورا الممثل.
I now give the floor to His Excellency Tsukasa Uemura, Special Representative of the Government of Japan, Special Envoy of the Government of Japan for the Middle East Peace.
Thank you, co-chairs. We extend our sincere gratitude to France and Saudi Arabia for their leadership in convening this high-level conference. In collaboration with Norway, our trusted partner and co-chair of the Working Group 4, we have engaged in vital discussions on practical measures to enhance the economic viability of the Palestinian state as part of our collective efforts toward a two-state solution. Co-chairs, Excellencies, the people of Gaza are enduring a grave humanitarian crisis marked by hunger and malnutrition. The conflict, now spanning a total of 21 months, have caused significant loss of lives, including innocent civilians and aid workers, such as staff from UNRWA. This is a profound tragedy. Humanitarian aid must never be contingent on political or military considerations. It is imperative that the United Nations and humanitarian agencies can operate independently and impartially. In this regard, we reaffirm that UNRWA continues to play an indispensable role in supporting Palestine refugees across the region. Co-chairs and Excellencies, Japan reiterates our urgent call for Hamas to immediately and unconditionally release all remaining hostages. In the meantime, Japan firmly opposes any action that undermines the realization of a two-state solution, including the potential reoccupation of Gaza and the expansion of settlement activities in the West Bank. It is critical that all parties seize the momentum generated by this conference, renounce military solutions, and work earnestly towards the resumption of the Gaza ceasefire and the broader peace process. أصحاب السمو والسعادة زملائي الأعزاء.
Highness, Excellencies, dear colleagues, Japan fully recognizes the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people to create an independent state. Our position is constant. We support these efforts with all of the resources at our disposal. In this context, Japan has consistently supported the two-state solution. And when it was a member of the Security Council last year, it voted in favor of the resolution supporting the request from Palestine to become a fully fledged member of the United Nations. When considering the outcomes of this high-level conference, based on the principles of strengthening peace, we shall continue our comprehensive evaluation of the question of the recognition of the Palestinian state, notably the right time to do so. Thank you.
Je remercie le représentant spécial.
I thank the Special Representative of the Government of Japan and Special Envoy of the Government of Japan for the Middle East peace. And I now give the floor to His Excellency Jun Tsai, Special Envoy of the Chinese Government on the Middle East issue.
Co-chairs, colleagues. First, on behalf of China, I thank France, Saudi Arabia, and the UN for preparing for the conference. In December last year, a resolution was adopted at the General Assembly asking to hold a conference with the theme of peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution. Today, we're gathering here at the UN for comprehensive, just, and lasting peace between Palestine and Israel to send the strongest voice ever calling for political settlement of the two-state solution. But at this very moment, the war flames are still raging in Gaza. Innocent lives are still being lost, and unprecedented humanitarian crisis persists, eroding the very foundation for implementing the two-state solution. Under the current urgent circumstances, the international community must not only sit down for solution, but also stand up for action, taking real steps to advance the two-state solution. To this end, China's proposals are as followed. First, we must pursue a comprehensive ceasefire with the utmost urgency to ease the humanitarian crisis. For over 600 days of the conflict, Gaza has already been reduced to rubble and ruins. Amid the hail of bullets and shells, civilian safety cannot be guaranteed, let alone progress toward a political solution. The authority of the Security Council must be upheld. China urges all relevant parties to earnestly implement the relevant Security Council and UNGA resolutions, immediately cease hostilities in Gaza, and promptly release hostages and those held captive. China asks Israel to fulfill its obligations under international humanitarian law, immediately and fully restore humanitarian access to Gaza, and supports the UN and international organizations in playing a leading role in delivering aid to Gaza. China calls on the Security Council to take all actions necessary to end this worst humanitarian catastrophe of the 21st century as soon as possible and create practical conditions for implementing the two-state solution. Second, we must uphold the principle of Palestinians governing Palestine for the governance of Gaza and the West Bank. Gaza and the West Bank are inseparable parts of the Palestinian territory. Any forced alteration of Gaza's status and encroachment upon the West Bank will bring no peace, but only new chaos, and bring a failing prospect of the two-state solution. China firmly opposes all words and deeds that violate international law and that seek to hollow out the two-state solution. China opposes settlement building, supports the Gaza Reconstruction Plan endorsed by the Arab Summit and the OIC Ministerial, and supports the PA in exercising effective jurisdiction over all Palestinian territory, including Gaza and the West Bank. China is ready to contribute its share to Gaza reconstruction. Third, we must support internal solidarity of Palestine and assist Palestine in strengthening governance capacity and economic resilience. Different factions in Palestine should seek common grounds and unite as one, which is the political precondition for an independent state of Palestine. China has long been dedicated to advancing national solidarity and unity of Palestine and supported the PA in strengthening authority, governance capacity, and effectiveness. Last year, in July, China invited all Palestinian factions to Beijing for reconciliation talks with the signing of a Beijing Declaration. Economy and livelihood are the material foundation for Palestinian sustainable development. China, through bilateral and multilateral channels, provides aids and training programs for Palestine. And China is ready to join the international community to continue humanitarian assistance and development support to Palestine. Fourth, we must safeguard the peace momentum for implementing the two-state solution. The current conflict is the bitter consequence of the prolonged marginalization of the question of Palestine. Now it awakens global attention. International sympathy for Palestine and support for the two-state solution have reached unprecedented levels. We all should seize this opportunity to demonstrate greater resolve and build stronger synergy to translate the two-state solution into action. China firmly supports the establishment of an independent state of Palestine based on the 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as its capital and enjoying full sovereignty. China calls on the UN to promptly admit Palestine as a full member state. China urges relevant countries not to set obstacles in the process, and appeals to countries that haven't yet recognized Palestine to do so without delay. Fifth, we must have a vision of common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security for achieving lasting peace and stability in the Middle East. The question of Palestine is the core of the Middle East issue, while situation in the Middle East also impacts the prospect for resolving the question of Palestine. China maintains that Palestine, Israel, and all the other regional countries rely on each other to enjoy security. Unilateral security approaches are untenable. Only common security can guarantee lasting peace by eliminating the breeding grounds for violence and hatred. Israel's legitimate security concerns should be respected, and Palestine's rights to existence, statehood, and development must also be realized. China sincerely hopes to see the peaceful coexistence of regional states at an early date, which will lead to peace, stability, and shared prosperity of the region. China stands ready to work with the international community to play a constructive role in de-escalating the regional tension. Colleagues, for however long the road is, we shall reach the end by walking. However difficult a task is, we shall accomplish it by doing. The two-state solution is the only feasible path to resolving the question of Palestine, and it represents the broadest international consensus. China hopes that this conference will inject new momentum into the realization of the two-state solution with a clear timeline and roadmap. China will keep working with the international community to achieve ceasefire in Gaza, and on this basis promote an early, comprehensive, just, and lasting solution to the question of Palestine. Thank you.
Je remercie.
I thank the Special Envoy of the Government of China on the Middle East issue. I now give the floor to His Excellency Armanata Christiawan Nasir, Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs of Indonesia.
Co-chairs, Excellencies, let me begin by thanking the government of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening this vital conference on implementing the two-state solution. We are here today to stand for humanity, to demand justice for the Palestinian people, to push for a lasting solution to the most protracted conflict in the United Nations history, For over 7 decades, Palestinians have been denied the rights to independence. Today, they are being denied not only for freedom, but the right to live as human beings, the right to exist. Every day, the toll of human suffering rises. Civilians perish while queuing for food. The very fabric of Palestinian society is being torn apart. When food aid becomes a death sentence, how much worse must it get before we act? We have all spoken loudly. We have condemned. But now we must act. Ask, how much longer will we allow this to continue? How much more life must be lost before the multilateral system fulfill its purpose to uphold peace and justice? Excellencies, Indonesia is proud to co-chair the Roundtable on Security with Italy. We bring the voice of solidarity, of principles, and of actions. This conference must be more than just another UN gathering. It must be a rallying point for global conscience. The future must not be a one-state reality built on annexation and apartheid. It must be a two-state solution where Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security within recognized borders based on the 1967 line in accordance with international law, UN resolutions, and international agreements. We therefore welcome the joint statement and leadership of nearly 30 countries calling for an end to the war and humanitarian crisis in Gaza. We also welcome other global initiatives supporting the state of Palestine. These efforts must be the spark, not the ceiling of our ambitions. Against this backdrop, let me highlight 3 essential points. First, recognition is not symbolic, it's strategic. Recognizing Palestine is not a favor, it is a duty under international law. To recognize Palestine is to stand for justice. It is to believe in the UN Charter. It is to level the diplomatic playing field. A two-state solution begins with political recognition. Only then can genuine peace negotiation take place. Only then can we end the illegal occupation as confirmed by the International Court of Justice. Second, hostilities must end. A ceasefire is not a tactic, it is a moral imperative. Humanitarian aid must flow. Civilians must be protected for both Palestinians and Israelis. President Prabowo has affirmed Indonesia's readiness to contribute to peace, including through providing personnel to support stabilization force efforts in Gaza under a UN mandate. We are not just advocating for peace, we are ready to help build it on the ground. Third, the future of Palestine must be Palestinian-led. Rebuilding Gaza and shaping its political future must be owned by the Palestinian people. No one can build a state of Palestine, only Palestinians can. Any attempt to forcibly displace them or impose conditions on their sovereignty must be firmly rejected. A strong, unified state of Palestine with full control over its territory, institution, and foundation is the foundation for sustainable peace. Only then can Israel truly be welcomed as a peaceful neighbor in a secure Middle East. Despite the devastation, Indonesia continues to invest in the Palestinian youth, particularly through education, because we believe one day these young people will lead a free, democratic, and sovereign Palestine. Excellencies, the time has come for decisive, irreversible steps to realize the two-state solutions. Indonesia stands ready to work with all countries to this end. I thank you.
Je remercie le
I thank the Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs of Indonesia, and I now give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. David Lammy, the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, Commonwealth and Development, United Kingdom.
Well, thank you, Chair. We gather today at a dark moment. 660 days since the Israeli hostages were first cruelly taken by Hamas terrorists. There is no possible justification for this suffering and only a clear duty that we help to bring it to an end. The devastation in Gaza is heartbreaking. Children are starving, and Israel's drip feeding of aid has horrified the world. These are an affront to the values of the Charter of the United Nations. Last week, Britain led 28 countries in demanding an immediate end to this terrible war, and we set the region on a path to a better future. That requires not just an immediate ceasefire, but a plan to make it last. Colleagues, our history means that Britain bears a special burden of responsibility to support the two-state solution. In the last 12 months, the United Kingdom government has repeatedly taken action in the face of the current crisis. We restored funding to UNRWA. We suspended arms exports that could be used in Gaza. We provided tens of millions of pounds in humanitarian assistance. We signed a landmark agreement with the Palestinian Authority, and we stood up for the independence of the international courts. We have delivered 3 sanctions packages on violent settlers, and we suspended trade negotiations with the Israeli government, and we sanctioned far-right Israeli ministers for incitement. Yet, dear friends, the situation on the ground continues to worsen, and the two-state solution is in peril. And so to reach that better future, we must first reflect on the past. 108 years ago, my predecessor as British Foreign Secretary, Arthur Balfour, signed the declaration that bears his name. It helped lay the foundations for a homeland for the Jewish people, and Britain can be proud of that. Our support for Israel, its right to exist, and the security of its people is steadfast. However, the Balfour Declaration came with the solemn promise that nothing shall be done, nothing which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of the Palestinian people as well. And colleagues, this has not been upheld, and it is a historical injustice which continues to unfold. As diplomats and politicians, we have become accustomed to uttering the words, a two-state solution. Countless times, this Assembly and the Security Council has proclaimed that there must be a two-state resolution. Resolution after resolution. Resolution 181, Resolution 242, Resolution 446, Resolution 1515, Resolution 2334. These cannot be just numbers on a page, but the conviction of a deeply frustrated world. Chairs, Hamas must never be rewarded for the monstrous attack on October the 7th. It must immediately release the hostages, agree to an immediate ceasefire, accept it will have no role in governing Gaza, and commit to disarmament. But Hamas are not the Palestinian people, and there is no contradiction between support for Israel's security and support for Palestinian statehood. Indeed, the opposite is true. Let me be clear. The Netanyahu government's rejection of a two-state solution is wrong. It's wrong morally and it's wrong strategically. It harms the interests of the Israeli people, closing off the only path to a just and lasting peace. And that is why we are determined to protect the viability of a two-state solution. And so it is with the hand of history on our shoulders that His Majesty's government therefore intends to recognize the state of Palestine when the UN General Assembly gathers in September here in New York. Friends, we will do this unless the Israeli government acts to end the appalling situation in Gaza, ends its military campaign, and commits to a long, sustainable peace based on a two-state solution. Our demands on Hamas also remain absolute and unwavering. Before the UN General Assembly gathers, we will take stock of how far the parties have come in meeting these steps. No one side will have a veto on recognition through their actions or inactions. But recognition by itself will not change the situation on the ground. That is why we are taking immediate steps as well, like airdropping humanitarian supplies along with our partners in Jordan, getting injured children into British hospitals, and pressing for the resumption of the United Nations humanitarian assistance. We also believe that a lasting ceasefire requires urgent progress on governance and security in Gaza. We are therefore working with allies on a plan for long-term political negotiations and a two-state solution. Chair, there is no better vision for the future of the region than two states. Israelis living within secure borders, recognized and at peace with their neighbors, free from the threat of terrorism, and Palestinians living in their own state in dignity and security, free of occupation. The decades-long conflict between Israelis and Palestinians cannot be managed or contained. It must now be resolved. Britain is ready to play its full and historic part. Thank you very much.
Je remercie très...
I very much thank the Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs of the United Kingdom. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Nuh Yilmaz, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of Turkey.
Esteemed Ministers, Excellencies, dear colleagues, I would like to start by expressing my appreciation to the co-chairs France and Saudi Arabia for taking the lead to revitalize the efforts for the implementation of the two-state solution. I also express our thanks to our fellow co-chair, Ireland, in the working group on preserving the two-state solution for its close cooperation. The two-state solution remains central to not only the peaceful settlement of the conflict, but also to preserving sustainable peace and security in the broader region. We should remember the reason why the two-state solution is not achieved so far: occupation. Therefore, any realistic solution has to face with this cruel nature of the occupation. In other words, the root cause of the problem, i.e., the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territory, should be addressed for any viable solution. Again, let me remind you that the reason why this conference was delayed was Israel's attacks on Iran. This is a testament to the urgency of ending Israel's aggression, expansionism, and policy of strategic destabilization in the region. Israel has strategically been exporting instability to the whole region by seeking for endless wars with hegemonic intentions. No central authority is spared, weakened state structures are sought, failed states are desired and even engineered. That begins and ends with the establishment of a sovereign Palestinian state, based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Horrendous images of innocent civilians, children, babies dying from hunger or shootings in Gaza shake all of us. The images that come out of Gaza in the 21st century will haunt humanity for the years to come. The genocide committed by Israel in Gaza is a dark stain on the international order. There are signs that the international order is being adversely affected by the continuation of this genocide. The rules-based international system is being called into question. An immediate and permanent ceasefire is the most urgent priority. Under the current circumstances, a ceasefire is not possible if the aggressor is not forced to do so. As the international community, we have the obligation to put an end to this man-made human catastrophe. For that, we have to collectively put together more pressure on Israel. For this, the recognition of the State of Palestine is the most imminent step to take by all those who have not yet done so. Within this framework, we welcome all recent moves for recognition. Aside from these urgent political steps, we should also help the Palestinian Authority in capacity building in all possible ways. In parallel to that, reconstruction efforts must be started without delay. The Arab Reconstruction Plan is the only viable plan for the reconstruction of Gaza. Turkey stands ready to contribute actively to these efforts. We stand at a critical moment. Yes, Palestine needs economic support, capacity building, empowering, trade, and any kind of material and moral support. Yet, we must all understand that this is not enough. Palestine needs more. Palestine needs strong and concrete political solidarity that should go hand in hand with coercive measures such as a UN ban on transfers of arms, as well as halting trade with the aggressor. Israel continues to enable illegal settlements. It even goes beyond, with its government chanting openly and loudly for the annexation of Palestinian territories. Settlerism is theft, settlerism is crime, settlerism is an anachronistic version of colonialism in the 21st century. Settler terrorism should not go unpunished. Settlers and their enablers must face consequences. Last but not least, The implementation of the two-state solution requires solid institutions and the protection of Palestinian people. Thus, supporting the Palestinian Authority and preventing Israeli actions aiming to uproot the Palestinian nation from their homeland are crucial for any credible roadmap for Palestinian statehood. Excellencies, with regard to the draft outcome document of our conference, particularly its paragraph 11, Turkey is of the opinion that, based on the decades-long Israeli record, the handover of weapons by the Palestinian armed groups should be closely conditioned to the realization of an independent, sovereign, and contiguous Palestinian state on the 67 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital, or an agreement reached among the Palestinian groups as part of the reconciliation process. But we did not break the silence, once again, to preserve the unity of the international community. We hope that our concern will be taken into consideration by the member states in their relationships and in the future processes. Turkey will continue its unwavering support for law, justice, and hence the rights of the Palestinian people who are in desperate need of our active and concrete support. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency the Vice Minister of Turkey, and I now give the floor to Mr. Emir Higgins, the Minister of Ireland.
Thank you very much. And I would like to begin by thanking our co-chairs, France and Saudi Arabia, for bringing us together today for this important and historic day. On behalf of Ireland, I reaffirm our unequivocal support for advancing the two-state solution. I endorse the conference outcome document, and I encourage other UN members to do the same. I welcome the announcement by France that it will recognise the State of Palestine, and I acknowledge the statement we've just heard from the United Kingdom. As we meet here today, Palestinians in Gaza are enduring unconscionable suffering. The humanitarian situation has reached catastrophic levels. Mass starvation is spreading across the Gaza Strip. Babies are dying because of a man-made famine. Violence, thirst, starvation are killing people every day. We are seeing the destruction of homes, of hospitals, of lives. The July IPC hunger classification, which was published today, tells us the worst case scenario of famine is now unfolding in Gaza. The humanitarian system in Palestine is crumbling right when it is needed the most. Israeli hostages remain in captivity with immense suffering for them and their families. And let me reiterate Ireland's unequivocal condemnation of the heinous terrorist attack by Hamas on Israel on the 7th of October. We urgently need to see a ceasefire, and we urgently need to see the release of all hostages. I thank Egypt, Qatar, and the United States for their efforts in securing progress as mediators. There must be an influx of life-saving aid to the people of Gaza. Humanitarian pauses and corridors are long overdue, and they are the bare minimum of what is required. Israel must let aid enter Gaza in sufficient quantities and let the UN and humanitarian organisations do their life-saving work. But instead, people are being killed trying to access aid. Children are starving before our eyes. Aid workers have been killed. This appalling situation shames us all. It is an affront to our common humanity, and it is an affront to the charter of this very organisation. For decades, we have known the only path to a just and a lasting solution to the Israeli-Palestine conflict is the two-state solution. Two states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace and in security. But for decades, we've seen collective failure to take collective and meaningful action. Today, to those suffering in Gaza and in the West Bank, the two-state solution must seem out of reach. But it cannot be. It cannot be about the long term. It has to be about the here and now. It has to be about today. And the two-state solution is key to achieving the most urgent goal, securing an immediate and sustainable ceasefire and the release of all hostages. The two-state solution is indispensable because it would deliver long-term peace, stability and security for the region as a whole. It is recognised clearly in the UN Security Council Resolution 2735, which rejects any attempt at demographic or territorial change in the Gaza Strip, including any actions that reduce the territory of Gaza. And it also reaffirms the importance of unifying the Gaza Strip with the West Bank under the Palestinian Authority. And yet, these principles are flouted with total impunity. We cannot stand by. We must demonstrate more clearly that we afford equal value to the security of Israelis and Palestinians. We, the international community, must act. We do not underestimate the difficult journey that lies ahead. In Ireland, we know this from our own experience of overcoming conflict. As former President Mary Robinson said yesterday, the arc of peace is long. And while each conflict is different, Ireland stands ready to share our relevant experience from our peace process. Ireland recognised the state of Palestine last year. We did that because we believe in the equal right to self-determination, to peace, to security, and to dignity for both Israelis and Palestinians alike. We welcome the announcement by France that it will recognise Palestine, and we acknowledge the statement we've just received from the United Kingdom. We encourage other countries to recognise Palestine. We encourage those who have not done so to recognise the State of Israel. The outcome of this high-level conference must be a clear signal to the Palestinian people that we support their right to self-determination and that we support the choice of the Palestinian leadership to achieve this through a peaceful political pathway. We welcome the commitments made by President Abbas in this regard. I reaffirm Ireland's support for the Palestinian Authority and its reform agenda. I call on Israel to release the revenues owed to the Palestinian Authority that it is withholding, revenues collected in tax that are necessary to fund vital services and to pay the salaries of workers in Palestine. This conference must be a turn.
You will just have seen my statement to the UN General Assembly. What I laid out is that the United Kingdom is now on a pathway to recognise the state of Palestine in September before UNGA. We have always believed that there is no better vision for the future of the region than two states. I'll let my words earlier speak for themselves, but I'm very happy to take a few questions. Let me start with the BBC.
Tom Bateman from the BBC, Foreign Secretary, thank you. There is a diminishing amount of Palestine left to recognise. Your critics will say this is because successive UK governments have empowered and facilitated Israeli governments that have made that very state unviable territorially and through the use of arms. How do you address the UK's responsibility when it comes to this? And why has it taken starvation to make you act now? And also, if I may, how much pressure is the UK government putting on the Israeli leadership to allow journalists independent access to Gaza?
Well, look, let me be clear. Since coming to office, we restored funding to UNRWA. It was important that we took the sober decision to suspend arms sales to Israel that could be used in Gaza. And of course, working with our partners, we've done everything possible to get the humanitarian aid into Gaza, to get those trucks in, and to ensure that we fund UK Med. And we've treated 24,000 Palestinians in that period. But the decision that we have taken today puts us on a pathway towards recognition. And over the next 8 weeks, what we are attempting to do is affect the situation on the ground. We have seen the most horrific scenes. The global community is deeply offended by children being shot and killed as they reach out for aid. The time has come for a ceasefire. The time has come to see those hostages released, and the time has come to abate the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza, to get them the aid and the medical equipment and supplies that they need. And it is my sincere hope that the decision that we have taken today affects the situation on the ground, and we get to that ceasefire, we get to those hostages coming out as soon as possible. And let me say, it has always been the position of the United Kingdom government that we support aid workers, and we abhor the loss of life of aid workers. And of course, it's essential that journalists are able to go about their business in Gaza and report the facts as they see it without fear or favour. Al Jazeera. Ah, I think I had a question for Al Jazeera. I was told Al Jazeera. Is Al Jazeera here? Right there.
Thank you, Foreign Secretary. 2 questions. Number 1 is, did your Prime Minister give a heads up to the U.S. President yesterday that he would be making this announcement today? And second question, your recognition of Palestine is conditioned, as you said. It's a pathway to recognition. Why is there this conditionality, and how will your government decide if Israel has met the conditions or not?
Well, let me state it wouldn't be right for me to comment on private conversations between our Prime Minister and the President of the United States, except to say, as you know, that the United Kingdom has the most special of relationships with the United States. We have always been clear that no country has a veto on solemn decisions that we make in the United Kingdom, and you will have seen in my statement that I made reference to the unique position of the UK in relation to the situation we see in Israel and Gaza and the occupied territories and the Balfour Declaration. And we have made a decision that puts us on a pathway to recognition next month. But what we have attempted to do is to affect the situation on the ground. And I sincerely hope that we see a dramatic improvement in the suffering, that we see a commitment to a ceasefire, and we see a commitment to a diplomatic process such that we do not get a pause in relation to that ceasefire, but we get an enduring peace. And it's for us to assess those conditions as we get to next month. But the undertaking I made in the General Assembly just a few minutes ago is a solemn undertaking in front of the whole global community. PA, I think. The PA. AP, sorry, AP.
Thank you. To follow up on Tom's question, what the French government has said it's willing to take actions calling on the EU to implement unfreeze money that Israel owes to the Palestinian Authority, to be able to sanction any Israeli settlers that are targeting West Bank settlements. What is the UK planning on doing to be able to coerce or incentivize Israel to fall in line? Will there be an arms embargo? Will there be any sanctions against Israel if they do not comply in this?
Well, the United Kingdom has already taken steps to sanction violent settlers on the ground, and these are decisions that other countries have not taken. We also took decisions to sanction Ben Gvir and Smodrik, and these are decisions that the European Union have not yet taken. We indicated 27 foreign ministers came together with me in a statement just 2 weeks ago, and we indicated that we would take further steps to affect the situation on the ground, and we are clear about that. But today is about achieving the abatement of the suffering that we see on the ground. We have to have those trucks get in, and our assessment is that 25 trucks went in, I think, on Sunday, perhaps up to 35 just in this last period. We have delivered 20 tons of aid with our Jordanian friends into northern Gaza in terms of airdrops to alleviate the suffering, and obviously to ensure that those airdrops landed safely in a clear path. But that will not ease the suffering that we are seeing, the malnourishment that now is widespread, and the fear of starvation that is a global concern. And so the United Kingdom, working with partners, and you've seen us working with our Arab partners, but obviously working alongside France and Saudi Arabia today, we are all attempting to bring an end to this suffering. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I thank the Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Italy. I now give the floor to His Excellency Florian Hahn, Minister of State at the Federal Foreign Office of Germany.
Co-chairs, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by thanking France and Saudi Arabia for convening this important conference. Our convening today takes place against the backdrop of the ongoing war in Gaza, raging for more than 20 months now. Nothing can be stronger, more pressing reminder of the need to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and to take action towards peace and the two-state solution. The humanitarian situation in Gaza remains utterly unacceptable. Hostages, including 7 German citizens, are still in Hamas's captivity. The man-made hunger crisis afflicting civilians in Gaza is especially unsettling. All this will have irreversible consequences for generations. Germany, therefore, demands immediate, safe, rapid, unhindered, and sustained access by the UN and humanitarian organizations, an immediate ceasefire, and the unconditional release of hostages now. More than 600 trucks are waiting in Al-Arish at the Egyptian border alone,
and Germany committed up to 350 million US dollars in humanitarian assistance since October 2023 to operations in the Palestinian territories. Ladies and gentlemen, Germany will always be unbreakably committed towards security of the State of Israel and its people. And it is our firm conviction that ultimately only the two-state solution with a Palestinian state existing side by side in peace and security will guarantee Israel's existence as a Jewish and democratic state. Or to put it in other words, all people in the region have to be able to live without fear and in dignity. After the horrendous terrorist attack of Hamas on the 7th October and the brutal war that followed since 20 months, one thing is clear. Managing the conflict is not longer an option. We finally need to solve it. The suffering of people has to end. We therefore appreciate that discussions on the day after in Gaza are a key part on this conference. As Germany, we suggest the following. First, Hamas must neither govern Gaza nor be a threat to Israel. For this reason, we stand ready to help providing security by concrete measures, including through EU missions such as UBAM, Rafah, and UPOL COPS, and support to the United States Security Coordinator for Israel and Palestinian Authority. We do this in cash and in kind. Second, we welcome the Arab plan for the day after. Any day after plan needs local Palestinian and Arab ownership. Gaza belongs to the Palestinians and must be rebuilt. Third, we state loud and clear that the Palestinian Authority, as sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, must play the key role in the future governance arrangement. For this reason, let me confirm that Germany stands ready to play an important role in the reconstruction of Gaza and supports the international efforts of Egypt and other partners. We are considering to co-convene a reconstruction conference soon after the ceasefire is achieved. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our clear policy to protect the viability of the two-state solution. We push back against any attempt to weaken or destroy it, be it on the ground or in the political sphere. For this reason, three legal arguments in line with long-standing EU positions are key to our policy. First, we do not and will not recognize any changes to the 1967 borders unless agreed upon by the parties. Second, we consider Israeli settlements in the occupied territories unlawful and a serious obstacle to peace. Third, we respect the ICJ's advisory opinion of the 19th July 2024 and act in line with its stipulations. Ultimately, we want to see an independent, democratic, and viable Palestinian state existing side by side in peace and security with Israel. Two remarks. This state needs to be built, not just declared. The building of this state has to be made possible, not impossible. For this reason, we contribute every single day in cash and in kind to building the foundations of the future Palestinian state. First, the total value of our ongoing bilateral development cooperation with the Palestinian Authority amounts to more than $1 billion in total. We work for better institutions, efficient Palestinian municipalities, and improved water services and infrastructure. Second, we strengthen the Palestinian economy through education, vocational training, and the work programs, and we call on Israel to release this tax revenue which belong to the Palestinian Authority under the provisions of the Paris Protocol. Third, we support civil society, peace building, dialogue, and shared society initiatives that pave the way for a better understanding of both societies. Joint narratives,
for peace are more important than ever. Ladies and gentlemen, even if it seems like a very remote perspective, while there is a war in Gaza and while there are very negative trends in the West Bank, a two-state solution must be negotiated by Israel and the Palestinians. As Germany, we have said to recognize a Palestinian state rather at the end of such negotiations. This is still our position, but we do see that Israeli policies are currently pointing in the opposite direction. This is utterly wrong and not serving Israel's long-term security interests. We therefore urge Israel to engage in the political process for a two-state solution, which is launched with the conference today. This is a way to achieve lasting peace and lasting security. Thank you very much.
I thank His Excellency, the Minister of State of Germany, and now give the floor to Her Excellency Minna-Lina Lind, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of Estonia.
Co-chairs and colleagues, let me add Estonia's voice to some very important statements already made during this conference. So as we are living in a world increasingly shaped by conflict, the international rules-based order with the UN Charter at its core is under a growing strain. One of the clearest and most painful examples in the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine, it stands as a symbol of our collective failure. Failure to prevent suffering, to mediate peace, to uphold international law, and to protect the innocent. We must ask ourselves, how can we, in the 21st century, allow this conflict to continue threatening both people? How many more generations must grow up amid rockets and rubble before we say enough? There are no words enough to describe the devastation caused by escalation of violence since 7 October 2023. We must continue to strongly demand the protection of civilians, the release of hostages, distribution of life-saving aid at scale, and accountability for violations of international law. Estonia has consistently worked towards these aims and provided humanitarian assistance through international humanitarian organizations. Ending the devastation in Gaza is not only a political imperative, it is a moral one. To truly end the cycle of violence, we must address its underlying causes. The only comprehensive path forward is the two-state solution, a viable independent Palestine and a secure and recognized Israel. Two peoples living side by side in peace, dignity, and security. This path requires meaningful engagement, courage, and leadership from both Israelis and Palestinians. We need to insist on benefits of dialogue, empower responsible voices, and support those who still believe that peace is possible. It also requires a committed international community. We need honest brokers who are guided by justice and long-term vision. We commend those countries and leaders who have undertaken that task and put in their effort throughout the years. We agree that it is high time to move beyond ideals towards practical implementation of the two-state solution. To this end, Estonia welcomes and supported the convening of this conference and is an active member of the Global Alliance for the Implementation of the Two-State Solution. There have been many valuable ideas on how to accelerate the implementation of the two-state solution, and we are ready to do our part. It has to start today. In order to materialize an independent Palestinian state, we need to strengthen the Palestinian Authority and Palestinian institutions. Estonia is a long-standing supporter of the Palestinian Authority. We have had cooperation in e-governance, helping to build digital services. We have advised Palestinian police through the EU mission and trained Palestinian diplomats at the Estonian Diplomatic School. We will continue to support the Palestinian Authority and its reform agenda. Estonia is also committed donor and partner to UNRWA and will contribute to discussions on the agency's future. The road ahead is difficult, but the alternative, continued violence and despair, is unacceptable. Let us recommit ourselves to peace as a necessity. Let us work to end this war as an act of global responsibility. And let us help bring Israelis and Palestinians together, not just because they deserve peace, but because the world needs it too. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of Estonia, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Herbert Scheibner, Special Envoy of the Republic of Austria for the Two-State Solution Conference.
Excellencies, distinguished co-chairs, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by expressing my appreciation to the co-chairs, France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for the convening of this very important high-level conference. Austria remains firmly committed to a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in the Middle East, a peace in which two democratic states, Israel and Palestine, live side by side in peace and security within secure and international recognized borders. But we are not here to merely reaffirm long-held positions. We are here to support concrete progress for real steps toward the implementation of the two-state solution. Sadly, the already distant prospects for a lasting peace have moved even further out of reach ever since the horrendous terror attack by Hamas on 7th of October. And we should never forget this. As a first and crucial step towards resuming a credible peace process, the war in Gaza must end right now. To this end, Austria calls for an immediate ceasefire in line with UN Security Council's resolutions 2735, leading to a permanent end of hostilities. Hamas must unconditionally release all remaining hostages with dignity. Taking them was a crime, a terroristic act that should never have been committed. At the same time, the humanitarian situation in Gaza is nothing less than apocalyptic. Too many civilians, too many children have lost their lives in vain. The suffering of the civilian population must stop. Abiding by international humanitarian law is not optional. In an effort to alleviate the dire crisis, Austria has provided over 67 million euro in humanitarian aid to Gaza and the conflict-ridden region since hostilities began. We welcome the understanding reached between the European Union and Israel to significantly improve the distribution of aid and call for its full and swift implementation. Moreover, the United Nations and the ICRC must be fully involved in the distribution of aid, a mechanism that does not comply with the humanitarian principles and puts vulnerable people at risk, defies its own purpose. The reported killing of over 1,000 Palestinians seeking aid is horrifying and unacceptable. Stabilizing both the security and humanitarian situations is a prerequisite for a second phase, the medium-term perspective. This second step is the reconstruction effort and economic support. For us, it's clear. Gaza is and will remain Palestinian. Any calls for displacement or annexation of Palestinian legal land are illegal and will not only lead to more chaos and violence in the region. But the most difficult question remains: how can a pragmatic and realistic governance arrangement be ensured for Gaza under the Palestinian Authority, in which Hamas plays no role and is fully disarmed, posing no threat to Israel? Austria welcomes the initiative of the Arab countries to present a plan for the reconstruction of Gaza. We will continue to support this plan and stand ready to contribute to its financing when the time comes for its implementation. Austria, also via the European Union, will continue to support the Palestinian Authority to help it address its most pressing needs, build international capacities, and implement its reform agenda. A strong Palestinian Authority is also in the interest of Israel. Therefore, we call on Israel to release the legitimate funds of the Palestinian Authority. Finally, on the long-term perspectives for a two-state solution. While this conference is of course an important contribution, a negotiated solution remains the only sustainable path that is in the interest of both parties. Austria therefore calls for the swift resumption of credible negotiations between the parties. Austria continues to support the Palestinian people's right to self-determination and the establishment of a democratic, viable, and continuous Palestinian state. In this regard, Austria will not recognize any changes to the 1967 borders unless agreed by the parties. Austria rejects any unilateral attempts to undermine the prospects for a two-state solution. The expansion of settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories is a clear violation of international law and an obstacle to peace. We demand that Israel holds all construction of additional settlements. The legitimate security concerns of Israel must represent a key consideration of any process leading to a two-state solution. All actors in the region must clearly reject any kind of terrorism. Excellencies, Austria's commitment to peace is unwavering. The international community has a clear role to play to enable, to support, and to hold all parties accountable. You ever can count on Austria to continue to stand always on the side of peace. Thank you very much.
I thank the Special Envoy of the Republic of Austria for the Two-State Solution Conference. I now give the floor to His Excellency Arjus Ursuljiks, Parliamentary Secretary of the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Latvia.
Distinguished participants, ministers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening this meeting at a critically important time. As a newly elected member of the United Nations Security Council, we are humbled by the responsibility we now share in upholding international peace and security. We approach this role guided by our own history of striving for sovereignty, dignity, and international recognition. Our experience is at the foundation of our belief that we can work together and make the two-state solution a reality. We have been striving for peace in the Middle East for several decades, and the current crisis, triggered by the brutal terror attacks of Hamas against Israel, is a testament to the necessity for a political horizon that can guarantee the security of both Israel and the Palestinians. More than 1,000 civilians killed in Israel during and after 7th of October of 2023, and almost 60,000 victims in Gaza are proof that the status quo is not sustainable. It is vital not to permit Hamas terrorists and other radical groups to hijack the Palestinian cause. Therefore, Latvia joins the international community in calling for immediate release of all hostages without preconditions, immediate return to the ceasefire, and ensuring supplying humanitarian aid at scale. Unfortunately, humanitarian situation in Gaza continues to spiral. Reports about civilian killings in Gaza while attempting to receive humanitarian assistance are deeply worrying and require immediate and independent investigation. Therefore, all efforts to expand humanitarian access to Gaza must be implemented swiftly and fully. The current crisis cements Latvia's firm belief that the only path to sustainable peace is through upholding international law, including international humanitarian law and the principles of UN Charter, in the Middle East and in other ongoing wars around the globe. We can build upon the Peace Day effort, expanding its focus beyond the day after to formulate concrete steps that will lead to the lasting solution. Meanwhile, it is essential to provide political and practical support for the legitimate Palestinian authorities, which the European Union, including Latvia, has strived to do for many decades. This should bolster the standing of Palestinian representation in potential peace talks and prepare the way for democratic elections in Palestine that should result in a government that has a strong mandate for negotiations towards a lasting, peaceful settlement. And in this regard, we welcome the intention of President Abbas to hold elections for a new Palestinian National Council before the end of the year. Latvia believes that the two-state solution must not be only a slogan. It must be a common goal for both sides and also for international community. Two-states recognizing Israel's right to exist as a state, and it is also a name that leads to mutual recognition and practical guarantees for both sides, because the alternative is further cycles of more destructive violence and radicalization. So let me take the opportunity to welcome the current conference once again as a crucial step towards building a roadmap that leads to the realization of the two-state solution. This should lead to direct negotiations guided by international law and relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions, resulting in two states living side by side in peace and security. Thank you.
Je remercie le...
I thank the Parliamentary Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Latvia. We have exhausted the time available for the general debate for this meeting. The general debate will continue this afternoon at 3 p.m. in this hall. The meeting is adjourned.